Hi, everybody. So thanks for being flexible and adjusting when things didn't quite go as planned for yesterday. Um, I could have gone ahead and done it, but the way that I wanted to approach everything was a little bit more interactive. And so when I found out that we were going to have a lot of people who were unable to make it, it just wasn't going to work very well. And this is much faster. So saves you time and that, which is totally fine. Okay, so don't worry about it. Um, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and walk through this. So our topic that we're talking about today is best practices for becoming a master teacher. And realizing that this is stuff that takes time in order to develop, but it's also very worthwhile. So some of the fundamentals for high quality instruction. One of the things that I think to myself often as a teacher, and certainly did when I was teaching full time, is I need to reach every student every day. And some schools use that as a motto or as something that they kind of a foundation that they operate from. And so that's also helpful if you are in one of those districts. There's a ton of articles about, best practices for high quality instruction. If you were to Google that, you can get all kinds of things, or top 10 methods for student engagement or tier one learning or something like that. This is actually my list that I have really honed my experience down to. And so this is a little bit more personal, perhaps, but these are things that, as someone who's been in education for nearly 30 years, this is what I think. I'm not an expert by any means, but I do have experience. And so that has really affected my list. But these are the things that I come back to as a teacher every time I'm doing planning. In fact, I spent a chunk of time yesterday doing some lesson planning for my class. And I was thinking a lot about this because these are all things that really drive what I do. So I'm just going to move myself out of the way on this recording here. Oops, I'll just scroll myself up and I don't have to look at myself either. Like I said, this is my list. So first of all, purpose, standards, well-planned lessons, variety, flexibility, classroom management, metacognition. We're going to talk all about all of those separately. Oops. So teaching with a purpose. This is not teaching with an objective or a learning target. This is knowing about why you are doing what you're doing when you're doing it. It's always a little bit surprising to me as a mentor or as an instructional coach, the number of times that I hear from teachers that they don't really know why they're teaching what they're teaching. It comes up next in the book is sometimes something that I hear, or I don't know. This is what I had to do when I took this class. So I really encourage you to think about very carefully why it is that you're doing what you're doing. Even when you have a scripted curriculum, you really want to think about how does this scope and sequence play out in the future for students. So, and the future might be next week, or it might be next year, or it might be in 2 years. But those are some things that you really want to think about. Knowing why skills are placed where they are placed helps you understand what the purpose is. I think, too, this one ties with classroom management, because if you don't know why you're doing something, I feel like kids can tell. And especially older kids. I know the times that I have really struggled with maybe some student behaviors or kids not wanting to engage very much. It's because I don't have a clear sense of of my purpose. So that's one thing that I really want for you to think about. If we had been able to meet as a full group, we would have done some breakout on the whole topic of what are things that can happen if there is a lack of purpose. So I would encourage you really to think about that on your own, okay? Standards plays into this as well. So if you know why you're doing something, maybe it's because it's tied to the standards, and you know that in order to accomplish the next set of standards, they have to have this set first. Standards, in my opinion, should be the foundation of all instruction. They also support your accountability. So if someone does ask you, why are you doing this? Or what's your reason for doing this right now? You have an answer for that. I also think that standards help improve the level of learning for students. And that's because when we hold them to a certain bar, we know, or we learn anyway, what they can do. If we don't set that standard pretty high, they don't have to jump very high. And we really want to be supportive of our students while still holding high expectations. And that's a difficult line to dance. But it's something that I think comes as you really start to think about this stuff very reflectively. One of the things that I want to point out is this particular link right here, which is all of the content standards. If I show you that, you can see all of them here. Of course, language arts is new just this year, will be included on state assessment next year. So that's also why it's really important. I like the setup of the new standards. It's a little bit more reader friendly. And then also the math standards are new. I think the oldest ones on here are physical education, but health is a little bit newer. And DPI operates off of a schedule for all of this. I don't know what's on the schedule next. I would think that our other two core areas of social studies and science are coming soon, but I'm not sure about that. If you are someone who teaches CTE courses in secondary level, your standards are on this webpage, and you can see all of them. So if you are an ag teacher, and I know I have a couple of you, there's a lot. And so you might have to do a little bit of digging. I will be actually curious to learn from some of you who are my CTE teachers, how you use your standards, okay? Because those are things that are really beneficial. And then, of course, business, family and consumer science, down to some other things with marketing or different trades and that kind of thing. Okay, so those are the two websites I wanted to make sure that I pointed out. Oops, oh goodness, don't scroll on my page there, sorry about that. This part right here at the bottom, when you go through standards, I like to use a 3-level method of kind of assessing what's needed and what isn't. What do students need to know? What's nice for them to know, and what isn't necessary? I know the first time I started working with standards, and I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was, but it was a while ago. We sat down with 3 different highlighters and we highlighted, and yellow was need to know, blue was nice to know, and pink was isn't necessary. Now, you might feel like all the standards are needed. Well, yes. However, you know your kids and you know your district. And while everything is something that should be addressed, we realistically can't do that. In the world of language arts, for example, there's a ton of standards and you can't hit them all. And if you try, you're not doing anything in depth. So this is something that, takes a little bit of consideration. If you operate in PLCs in your district, hopefully this is a part of your conversation. If it's not, I I guess I'd be curious to hear about that too, because that's something that I feel like I could probably support you with, if that's a direction that you want to go. Well-planned lessons use patterns, okay? So you always want to introduce something, and it's called a lot of different things in education. Way back in the dark ages, when the T-Rexes were roaming, we called it an anticipatory set. I don't know if they still use that terminology in ed classes, but sometimes you'll hear it referred to as a hook or a bell ringer or something like that. Something that engages kids from the beginning, a question, a quick show of hands or something like that. Just a little bit of engagement. Maybe it's a quick video. And then that teaching part, that direct instruction, or the reading that you ask them to do, or the questions that you're asking them to consider, okay? What I want to talk a little bit more about, though, is this idea of gradual release. I'm sure that you've heard about the I do, we do, you do. I like to add a fourth layer, and that's y'all do. I like having kids work in smaller groups with some guidance from me as I circulate. Then I can let them go off onto their own. Maybe I don't have them do a whole lot with that, but even if they're doing a little bit, I think especially for your kids that have questions, it helps them gain a little bit of confidence. And I also find that kids who don't ask questions during the we do part will ask questions during the y'all do part. And especially if I'm assigning the you do as homework or as a long-term kind of thing, they may not have an opportunity to ask questions. So that's why I really like this third layer. And then, of course, assessment, whether you do that formatively or summatively. And I like my favorite formative assessment during class, when I ask, are you following me here? Is give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a thumb sideways, or give me scale of 1 to 5. 1 being, I don't understand what you're talking about at all, or 5, yep, I got it, let's move on. And for high school kids, that's a really easy check, but I think even for younger kids, that's something easier to do. And then I think step 5 is the one that is hardest for us. When do we practice some more as a whole group? When do I intervene with a few? And when do I move forward? And I'll just tell you right now that you're going to make mistakes with this. You're going to move forward, and then you're going to give them a test, and you're going to discover, wow, they really weren't ready for this. Know that when that happens, it's not necessarily a mistake. You may have had indicators that said that they were ready. And then the test proved otherwise. Your test may have been written to assess some things that they weren't ready to be assessed on, or ask questions in a different manner. I was just talking to my son last night, actually, and I think I've shared that he's in graduate school, and he had his midterm tests. Actually, he had all of his tests all in one day on Tuesday. So he was telling me about them yesterday. And he said that one of the tests, which was, I don't even remember what it was in, organizational something or other. I don't know. It sounded awful to me. He said he felt like every question was like a riddle. The way in which it was asked was so difficult that he couldn't quite decide how to approach the answer. So some of it was essay and that kind of thing. And he also said that it's the first time in his education, 4 years of undergrad and now a year and a half of grad school, that he has used the entire 90 minutes for a test. So just some things that I think are interesting. That stuff never goes away. Variety. How often do you switch up your methods? Variety helps engagement, and ruts are deadly. We all know what it's like to sit in a class where you know that the teacher is going to come in and ask you some sort of a bell ringer question, kind of always on the same line, teach for 30 minutes, and then have you do an assignment for 15, or you look at slides on a PowerPoint and just sit there and listen. You don't have to do anything, and then you have an assignment. We all know that method, right? And also, what you want to think about, it's not just what you are doing, but it's what your kids are doing. What are those things that are engaging them? And are you mixing that up? Scripted curriculums make it tricky, but as you gain experience, you're going to learn when you can flex that a little bit. If there's one thing that you can do this year, I would just really pay attention to this. You maybe can't change this a lot right now, but start paying attention to when things are going really well. What happened that day? And make notes about that. If you are someone who journals about your first year of teaching, or just journals in general, I think that's a really great way to kind of keep track of, this worked well, this really bombed today, and I think this is why. Then you're in a better position to make adjustments. I'm a Post-it note person, so when I teach, and I still do this, I make notes and I stick it right on my notes for my teaching, or in my book or something like that. So when I open to that next year, I see the reminder, oh yeah, that's right. You can't approach this thing before you do this thing. You've got to flip-flop that. Or they really wanted to dig into this, so you might want to beef that part of it up. Or, yeah, that video that you used was not probably helpful for most of them. Double check that this year and make a decision whether or not you want to use it again. Okay. What to do when the lesson doesn't go as planned? I have a website that I want you to look at. Oops, I got to move this thing on my, there we go. Oh dear. There we go. This is an article from Edutopia, so you can go ahead and Google this later. I'm going to point out, though, something to you. I kind of disagree with this right here. I'm just going to bring myself back up. I don't like this whole paragraph. And here's the thing. I don't teach 6-year-olds. So maybe, and 36-year-olds terrifies me. But I am a strong believer with a lot of kids. I think it's okay to say, you know what? I made a mistake. In fact, just today with my seniors, I said, I get the sense that you guys aren't really seeing how all of this connects. Am I right? Because we've been working on several different things over the last couple of weeks. And they all started nodding their head like, yeah, where are we going with all this? And I said, okay, here's the deal. This is how this all will pull together. So we're going to continue with this. Tomorrow, we're going to do this. Next week, we're going to do this. And by the week after, you're going to be able to pull this all together. Okay. I think the ability to make adjustments like that is also something that comes with experience. But I also think the ability to stand there and say to kids, I kind of screwed this up, really engages their trust. So just something to think about. Classroom management. I'm also interested when I visit classrooms to see how the classroom is, how the culture of the classroom works for every kid. I think about a few different classrooms I've visited in the past where the teacher is very comfortable with semi-organized chaos. They feed on the noise and the movement and that feeling like there's different people doing different things all the time. I also recognize when I'm watching something like that while that might feed that instructor, and there might be children in that room who really respond to that, there are always kids who don't. I'm an introvert. People make me tired. And a lot of noise is very difficult for me to be around for a long period of time. I am a much calmer person if the things are more relaxed. Okay. So you have to think about what is it that my students need, not just what I like, but what do my students need? So you really want to do some serious consideration with that over this year. And I know that you get different kiddos every year, but you have to find what you're comfortable with. And then you also have to make accommodations for all those kids that are in your room too. Teacher talk is something that you just really want to make yourself aware of this year. What's the language that you're using with kids? It's interesting to me that in literacy studies, one of the ways that young teachers of young students can influence language development is to use higher quality words, the $20 words instead of the 2-cent words. And I think that can be a rut that we get into also, is we talk to kids like they're kids, and sometimes maybe we should be talking to them a little bit differently because they might rise to that occasion, right? And the number one thing about classroom management: consistency, consistency, consistency. Even if your setup doesn't work well one day, if you believe in it and you remain consistent with it, pretty soon it will become second nature. I've gotten to the point, and of course I have older kids, and I know that makes it a little bit different. I don't have rules anymore because I don't have to. Kids kind of know what to expect. I suppose you could say that stories are legendary. I don't know. But I think that consistency makes a big difference. And you guys know what I'm talking about. When you were in school, you knew the teachers with whom you could get away with stuff, and you knew the teachers with whom you couldn't. So that makes a big difference. And kids will respect consistency. They may not like it, but they'll respect it. And there's a big difference. Feedback and metacognition. Now, I realize that this might feel like something like, really? This is a part of this. I think we really don't think about, when do students need to hear from us? And then when do kids just need to reflect on their own learning and progress? Even littles can do this. They can think about those things. They can start to write about that. They can draw pictures about that. We need to learn that it's not just us pouring stuff into their little brains. It's also us helping them to figure out how to learn. And that really is the gradual release of school, right? Like, we take them in kinder when maybe they haven't been away from mom and dad or siblings or anything very much at all. And then we try to grow them for the next several years into these people who can move out into the world and be, high functioning adults. And what are we doing to give them the tools to think like that? There's a lot of research that says that feedback and metacognition, thinking about their thinking, helps them foster a growth mindset too. So we're always thinking about, darn it, I didn't get this yet, but I'm going to keep working on it, rather than having them hit a wall and give up. And so those are the things that we really want to think about. Make it a habit in your classroom. Ask for feedback yourself. What do you guys think about that? How did I do? What would you like me to do differently? I think kids are always a little bit surprised when they get to give feedback. But I also think that it's helpful for me as a teacher to find that out. And then also, inviting students to think about what they've learned. You can walk through that you can show them how humans do that with like learning a sport or picking up a new hobby or taking on a new chore at home. How is it that we go from not knowing how to do something to that process of learning how to do it? Okay. So these are some things that I have found are nice foundational sentence stems or questions to use for both of those. I'm not a big, I did my master's thesis on feedback in writing. And I'm not, I know that there's a lot of things that say, oh, you should make it a compliment sandwich, you know, something good, something to work on, something good. I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm just saying that I'm not going to do that every time. That sounds terrible. I'm going to tell you what you've done well, but I'm also going to tell you what you need to work on. And I think if we're afraid to tell kids what they need to work on, if we're afraid to give them the feedback that helps them grow, then where are they going to get it? So just these are all things for you to consider. These are not changes for you to make tomorrow. Okay. I think these questions about metacognition, what have I learned? What do I still have questions about? I love to use this as a feedback tool for me. And I have kids write their top takeaway, their top question, and post them on the board before they walk out of the room. Then I know, oh, okay, this is what we're picking up, but we've missed something because nobody mentions this other takeaway. And we have a lot of questions about this. That's really helpful for me. Okay. And I think these last two questions here, what's my goal as a learner? You can even think about this as a teacher. What's my goal? What do I want to be able to do by the time I am achieving that goal? And then what am I willing to do to reach that goal? You know, kids might say, and this is where sports, I think, comes in, like they might want to be a professional baseball player, but what are they willing to do to get there? Okay. Five to 7 years to be a skilled teacher. And by skilled, that means someone who can pivot in the moment. Someone who can make adjustments to lesson plans, not necessarily in the moment, but certainly to accommodate learners. That might seem like a long time from now, but nobody is perfect at their job on day one. I had seen a meme not that long ago. The first time you did this, you probably failed. The first time you did this, you probably failed. Not that you're failing, that's not my point, but you're learning things, and that's okay. So our next process here is selecting a goal for you to work on through the year, okay? So I'm making adjustments to my lesson plans, just like I did today. So what's next? So originally I had said that we were going to do our next virtual meeting on November. Let me see, I had to look at the 8th, which is a Wednesday. I'm actually going to record again because that one will be quite short. And I'll send that out and everybody can view it on the hub by November 3rd. Okay. Then from the 8th to the 14th, so it's a week, it's a Wednesday to a Tuesday, I am going to send out a schedule for one-on-one check-ins with everybody. And those check-ins will help me identify what it is that you want to work on. And then we'll schedule my first visit. Okay. And I love getting to visit your classrooms. I try to give you some very targeted feedback on some things that I notice, things that I see. And then, you know, it's a conversation. Okay. And then the first visit will be right before Thanksgiving. Okay. The 20th is that week of Thanksgiving. through the 15th. I'm not coming to any elementary schools the week before Christmas. It is not happening. So I will do that. Several of you are in the same district. I would love to be able to like travel to Mohall and hit, I think I have 2 or 3 people up there, hit them both on the same day, rather than to go back and forth between Rugby and Mohall twice. St. John, I have a few, Dunseith has a few, Drake Animus has a few. Yeah, so we'll try to work on coordinating that a little bit. Okay, so that's what is next, and I'm going to stop sharing. And I think that's it. I think I got it all in. Thank you for your flexibility. The hub course is going to look a little bit different after the update. I was just on there yesterday, and I'll be on there again today. I have been having trouble uploading my videos. I'm hoping that the update will help with that. And I also have a couple of different methods for doing that. So that should be all caught up. Also know that if you're not taking this for credit, what you do in the hub is completely up to you. I think the sources that I try to link are valuable. I try not to waste people's time, but I also know you guys have a lot on your plates. First and foremost, take care of yourselves, okay? And just know that this is time that is meant to support you, not cause you additional stress, okay? So as always, if you have questions, let me know. I'm here to help. If you just need to unload on somebody who's outside of your district, I'm available for that too. I have heard a lot over the years, so there's not a whole lot that you can tell me that I'll be shocked by, but that's not a challenge. So take care, you guys, and we'll see you in about 3 weeks. Have a good day.